So this evening I'm working on a little project. I'm doing some restoration work on one of my ukuleles. So this here is my baritone ukulele, and a baritone ukulele is the largest size of ukulele, and I've actually had this ukulele longer than any of my other ones. This was actually passed down from me from my mom. My mom actually owned this when she was a teenager and had hopes of learning to play it, but that didn't really end up happening, and it was just ended up sitting in my grandparents' basement. And until I found it one time and I got interested, and at the time I wanted to learn how to play guitar, so I took it home with me, and I just sort of taught myself on this. And this is my only string instrument before I got my first guitar, which was my electric guitar. So right now this instrument's in pretty rough shape. You can see it's very dusty. It hasn't been played in a long time. It's actually missing a string. But there's some other issues wrong with it. I mean, there's lots of scratches and dents and stuff, all over it. But I'm pretty sure it's still going to play pretty well for me, but there's a few things I need to do to it to make it so it'll sound good again. This piece here on an instrument is called the nut, and usually it's white in color, and it's made from originally they're made from bone, but more recently they just make them out of plastic. And the original nut, this is not the original nut from this ukulele. The original one got lost somewhere along the way, and a few years ago I had the same idea of putting this thing back together again, so I could play it again, and I didn't have any plastic or anything at the time to make a nut, so I just ended up using some hardwood. That's a cherry wood, I believe, that's made out of, and it just glued on there. I just cut some slits for the strings, but unfortunately that fix didn't really last very long. It didn't really work that well because the strings that are used, this string and the other string that's here that's missing, they're the lower strings on this instrument, and they're made from a wound material, like there's metal wound around some fibers, and that's what gives it the sound, whereas these ones here are just clear nylon. So these ones are a lot more delicate, so what happens when they're being tuned through here is those fibers get pulled apart, and it becomes weaker in that section, and that's why with some of the metal coming off, that's why it became weaker there, and that's why I'm missing this string here, because it got weaker there. It actually broke a few times. You can see I have a different string in here. I had it tied back together again, just so I could still use that string again. But my project for today is to try and restore this back to as close to originally how it was. So I'm going to make a plastic nut, hopefully, and down here at the bridge. This bridge also isn't the original one. It looks, pretty similar to the original one. You can see it's cracked here. Again, the original bridge just went missing on me, and I don't know what this plastic came from. I think it was from like a clear ceiling tile, for like a fluorescent light. That's what I made that one out of, but it doesn't work very well. Again, it's very rough here. It's not as smooth as it should have been. Maybe I didn't spend enough time sanding it and making it smooth. But again, that causes the metal wound strings. It causes them to rub against there when you're tuning it, and then your string's much weaker, and you end up breaking strings more often. So that's basically what I'm going to work on today. I'm just going to clean things up, obviously clean off some of the dust, try and get it looking as good as I can. I don't really care too much how good it's going to look, as long as it'll play half decently. I still haven't exactly really figured out what I'm going to use for replacing this part of the bridge here. I've got some other plastic material as well. This is PVC, I believe, and again, I might be able to use this, although it'd be nice to use something that was more similar to the original, maybe some kind of nylon or something, so it's not going to be brittle, and it's not going to crack right there like the original one did. But we'll try it out and see. But we're going to worry about that second. We're going to worry about the nut first. So this is what I've got for making the nut. It's a piece of white nylon, I believe. It's just kind of a scrap I picked up when I was working in a shop somewhere, and I thought, oh, that would be perfect for making a nut. It's not really, it hasn't been really cut very straight, but I'll spend quite a bit of time shaping it and making it as good as I can. This ukulele here, I have a neck, just the neck section of a Denver ukulele, a very inexpensive ukulele. I ended up using the body for another project, so I had this much left over, and I had been thinking, oh, I can just take this nut off and put it on there, but unfortunately, they're different sizes. The soprano neck is much thinner than the one for the baritone, and this would be too narrow to go in there. But I'd also like to just keep this kind of together, just so if I ever want to, make some sort of a crated ukulele, just attaching this to like a tin can or something. You see creative things like that done with ukuleles all the time. So it'd be nice to have a full piece, with the nut still intact as well. So I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to use that, but I am going to use, just by looking at that, my guide for shaping this to do the job that it's going to do. So this is actually about twice as thick as it needs to be. So what I'm actually going to do first is I'm going to cut this down the middle, and then that'll give me about the thickness of this that I need. Only about half that thickness, and then it'll also give me like kind of 2 tries at it. So if I mess up the first one, then I can just use the other piece that I cut off to give it a second try. So that's what I'm gonna do first. I'm gonna mark it down the middle, and just using a hacksaw. I don't have any really fancy power tools for working with plastic or anything here, so I'm just gonna be doing most of this just by hand. So that's the first step I'm gonna do here. So there, now we've cut it in half, and we've also trimmed it so that it's the right width that we need for there, and it looks like it's gonna hopefully work out pretty well. The cuts are all, I don't know what was used for cutting it. The sides that I didn't touch today, the sides that were already cut, but all the sides are pretty rough as it is. So just basically now I've just got to spend a lot of time just working on this and trying to make it look like that. So trying to put a nice little curve on the back of it, and I'll save the task of cutting the little slits in it for the very end. But yeah, we just got to make sure we get that nice and smooth, so that there's no rough edges that are gonna catch on the strings that are gonna go through there. I really have hardly worked with this material, so I really don't know how easy it's gonna be to work with, but we'll see how it goes. So I've been working on this for a while, and this is what it's starting to look like. I started by just smoothing off all of the sides, getting all the rough spots off of them as best I could. And now I'm just starting to create that curved edge, which is on the front side. I haven't started at all on this edge here. I just kind of started over here at this end. I'm just going to extend that all the way across eventually, and I'm pretty happy with how it's working out. This material is pretty hard, so it does take a fair bit of work to file it off. I've just been using this small file here, and as well as a larger file which I had in a vise, and I've just been rubbing it back and forth, and just taking a little bit off at a time, and just getting it looking the way that I want it to look. So again, this is what I'm trying to make it look like over here. So as I said, the one that I'm creating is going to be thicker than the one from the soprano one, or longer, wider. But yeah, I'm just it's not going to be as perfect as that one, but I'm hoping it's going to blend in pretty well, and you're not going to really be able to tell that it's not an original nut. So I'm just going to finish up getting that back edge there, just get it nice and smooth, so it's kind of similar to that one. I'm not really sure if that's really that necessary, if it's kind of just done for design purposes, but I don't really care. I'm just going to finish her off, and then we're going to start worrying about putting those slots in it so that it can accept the strings, and I want to make sure I don't get those too deep, so that the strings aren't rubbing up against the frets on the neck there. But we'll worry about that when we get to it. So I pretty much got this finished in terms of shaping it. I'm really happy with how it's looking. It looks pretty professional, pretty much like that one. It's got a few little scratches and stuff. You really can't see it on the camera. A few little deeper scratches, which I didn't really go to too much trouble of smoothing them out completely. But as it is, I'm pretty happy with it. What I ended up doing was just using a file, as I said before, just to get it nice and shaped the way that I wanted it. And then after that, I used sandpaper just to rub all over all of the surfaces, make sure all the corners, all the edges are all smoothed over, get them nice and rounded, so it's going to be nice and smooth. You want to make sure that there's no jagged edges around or anything, because you're going to have your hand kind of up against it, and you're going to be rubbing up against it every so often, and you don't want to, you don't have any blisters on your hand or anything from sharp edges against your skin. But yeah, so I'm pretty much finished there. So yeah, so I used the sandpaper. Then I used some even finer grit sandpaper. I used 600 grit, this stuff here, which is really not that rough at all. It's almost feels just like a thick piece of paper, but it is sandpaper, and it did work pretty well of getting this. It's almost looking kind of shiny. Because all the rough areas on the sides from the file and the other sandpaper have just completely been smoothed off, and as I said, it's almost kind of polished from the fine grit sandpaper. All we've got really left for this end of the instrument for finishing the nut, or to build this nut before we replace the wooden one that's sitting there underneath, is to cut the slots in it, and we got to be careful when we do that we don't cut them too big. We want to make sure they're obviously, you'll notice if they're too small because the strings will come out of them. But yeah, you don't want them to be too big, or the string can sort of move back and forth, and it kind of causes like sort of a buzzing noise in the fret. So I've got to make sure I figure out some way of doing that. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do that yet. Probably a file just to just make a little round edge. I got to make sure that the hole is actually round though. Not like a triangle. It's got to be round like that one is, and round like the strings are going to be. Yeah, so I probably will use a file, and then I want to make sure I get it nice and smooth. So I'll probably rub wrap sandpaper around a string or something, and then I'll pull the string back and forth through the hole there to make sure that there's no jagged edges or anything on there, so that it's not gonna you may not really any friction when I'm putting new strings on or tuning it, as the strings being pulled through the groove there. So that's what I'm going to work on next. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to go, but I'll update you when I get there.